Hey guys, let's pull this cylinder head off. What are you waiting on? Let's get it done. It's right there. I'm right here. Let's do this. Dom, what do you think? What's wrong, bro?
I'm kind of nervous there.
Got a little nervous? Say hi to the world.
Hello, world.
Here we go. Guys, so we got the head off, so let's check out the cylinder crosshatch, see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. You know, we'll have to look at this thing closer, and I'll rotate the engine over once we clean all the carbon off the top of the pistons, and we'll run a stone across the deck of the block, and we'll pull these dowels right here. We'll pull those dowels out, and we'll rotate the engine to where all the pistons are below the deck. So I don't know if you can see that, but that right there where the piston is sticking up above the surface of the deck, that's what's called piston protrusion. We're going to measure that on all 4 cylinders. To make sure that we don't have, you know, a bent rod or you know, a rod that's collapsed slightly or anything like that. We'll make sure that that's all within spec. We'll clean all that carbon deposit off of the top of the cylinder where the rings don't scrape it free, and we'll just clean this whole thing up. We'll try and knock off some of the rust and everything off of the water jackets from not running coolant. Try and clean all this up and vacuum it all out of there when we're done. And then we'll lubricate the cylinder walls. We'll lubricate the cylinder walls with some Lucas oil on a clean rag, so that way when it fires up it has plenty good lubrication. But anyways, making some progress. Got a lot done tonight. Thanks to Dom. Thanks, Brew. What do you think? Made a lot of progress tonight, huh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. What do we got to drink here, man? Oh, water. Perfect. Freaking thirsty. Work up a freaking appetite and thirst. I can't refrigerate the world. Alrighty guys, here we are. We just got done porting out this head so we can take a look here. So you can see we removed quite a bit of material. What we did is we just gasket matched the exhaust ports here and went in there and just cleaned them up as best we could to make them flow a whole heck of a lot better. And we also went in here and cleaned up the bowls. I don't know how well you can see, but we did not remove the swirl ramp. Swirl ramp's still there, just cleaned up, de-shrouded the valve, so now it can flow really nicely. We did all of them. This is all of the material that got removed. That is quite a bit of, that was just what was on the table. You know, there's a bunch over here on the deck and all over the place. So we removed quite a bit of material off the head, I'd say. But yeah, and in case you were wondering, that is a piston holding up the cylinder head. That's a big old piston. We work on some big stuff here, man. Yeah, man. Say something about Dom. Huh? That's a man's piston. Look at that thing.
That thing's not.
Look at that piston.
It's a big old piston.
That's a lot of piston meat right there.
That is.
All right. Anyway, that's the cylinder head. That's all the meat. That's the piston meat. Hey guys, how's it going? So we're doing some valve grinding or valve lapping, and we're just seating or making the two surfaces of one, this shiny spot right here on the valve. I don't know if you can see that. This spot right here, that's a machine surface for the valve to seal against the cylinder head. It's right there. Now, what we're doing is we're sticking that valve in its corresponding port, and we're putting some valve grinding compound on there. Now, this stuff's pretty neat. The way I understand it, the way this stuff works is as you use it, the sand that's in there breaks down and gets smaller and smaller. So that's kind of, you know, advantageous, because normally if you're sanding down, let's just say wood or something, you're going to start out with, you know, 100 grit sandpaper to get the shape that you're looking for if you're trying to shape the wood, and then you would progressively step that up and up and up and up to, you know, 1500, 2000 grit sandpaper to get the surface extremely smooth. During that process, you have to swap from one material to the next, you know, the different sanding papers. And it's kind of unique with this stuff is that it starts out coarse and ends up fine, you know, as you work it into the head. And you'll be able to hear it, you know, throughout this video. As you're watching this, I'll be quiet for a minute so that way you can hear it. But as we start out initially, it's going to be rough and gritty. And then as we keep going, you'll hear that valve start to seat into the head and start to find its groove. And anyway, I'll just shut up and start working so that way you can see what I'm talking about. As we do it, we want to make sure we rotate this and keep going. Rotate it and keep going, so that way we're not working the valve in the exact same spot each time. We want to evenly sand that surface down. And you can hear where it starts to get quiet there, and then it gets loud. I slightly pick up on it to allow this compound to kind of sneak underneath that valve seat, so that way we can get some more cutting action. You hear that? So it's important that as you pull this out, you don't let the valve stem touch any of that grinding compounds, because if you get this down into the valve stem bore, you'll start wearing that out, and then you'll have a loose valve, which obviously is not a good thing. Let's clean this up and take a look at what we got here. A little bit of brake clean, just a little bit. Because as you wipe that gritty sand away, it dries out, and then the sand is kind of hard to get rid of when it's just sitting there dry. And obviously, maybe not obviously, but when you're done doing a job like this, you need to pressure wash, or you know, put the head in a parts washer or something. You need to find a way to clean it extremely well to get every last bit of sand and contaminant off the head before you assemble it with your freshly lapped and polished valves and valve seats, and, you know, your new valve seals and all that. Here, I'll just have you guys in my vise. Let's take a look here. So it's kind of hard to pick up on the camera, but just be patient. So this gray area here, this thing would focus. Let's see here. I don't know if we're gonna be able to see it. You guys won't get that much detail, but you'll get the gist of it. This gray area from, let's see here, from here to there, that's the valve seat. And we're grinding that entire seat all the way around as we work that valve with that suction cup. Now, I can see it in real life, but there's some contrast over here with this shiny part of the head where I remove material that's kind of throwing the camera off. But there is some shiny spots right here. Now what that means is there's some high spots, right? So we need to keep going with this valve grinding compound and kind of clean that seat up a little bit more. And what we're looking for is just a nice uniform color all the way around. A smooth, that's going to indicate a smooth surface. And then we can go ahead, and once we have that, we can just use, I just use this polishing compound. That's nothing special. It's just something that they had at O'Reilly's here in town, and seems to work pretty well for this. So here we go. Bit ahead of myself. I went ahead and installed all the valves, and we put all the valve seals in. And these valve seals, they're pretty neat. They're not like the factory valve seal. Basically, the factory valve seal is just this little rubber part up here, and they slide down over the valve, and basically it just seals the oil from going down on the valve stem down into the either the intake or exhaust port and getting oil into your engine. So that's its job. But these are unique in the way that they have this metal piece on the bottom where when you put your valve spring over it, it holds that valve seal in place, and it can't lift up. Sometimes what will happen is the stem of the valve will actually cause this to lift up slightly, and it won't allow it to seal the way you would want. So having these is really kind of nice. I just buy them. There's a bulk bag of them for 6BT, and then I end up with a couple left over, which is fine because they always end up getting used anyway. So here's the springs. These are the 60-pound valve springs. We're going to go ahead and load those up now. So Alright guys, we're getting ready to head home. We just masked off the entire head and painted it. As you can see, all the exhaust ports are all ported. The head was painted. We just have these valve covers just sitting on top. More than anything, I was just curious how the black and the tan is going to look. I think it'll tie in well with the rest of the engine. I mean, right now it doesn't really look all that good, but you know, with the block being tan and the exhaust manifold being black and some other key accent features, I think it'll look all right. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and go home, call it a night, and get some shut-eye, get up in the morning, get some coffee, and get back over here, get this head on and torqued, and get the rest of the engine assembled, get it fired up, go on a test drive, come back, and we'll go ahead and we'll do what's called a hot torque, and we'll retorque all the head bolts, which means the valve covers will come back off, and you have to remove your injection lines just on the injector side, just to kind of pry it out of the way so you can get these head bolts that are in between the valve covers. So we'll do that hot retorque on all of the factory Cummins head bolts. Once we do that, I usually bring them up to 120 foot-pounds. That seems to do the trick. I torque the whole head starting at 55 foot-pounds, and I work my way up incrementally, usually in 3 or 4 steps up to 120. And then, then I'll do my hot torque and all that. So seems to hold very, very well for a long time. Anyway, we're going to go home. It's time to go to bed. All right. All right, guys, so we have the head gasket right here. It's hanging up. The reason why we got it hanging up is because we're going to coat both sides with this copper spray gasket by Permatex. In my experience, it does a really good job of helping the head gasket seal to the deck and to the engine block and the deck of the head. So I go ahead and I coat both sides, and then we put it on the top of the engine after we go ahead and wipe it down one last time with some brake clean and a rag and just clean out the cylinders. Then I lightly coat the cylinders and just make sure everything's nice and clean. And then we go ahead and we put this on, set the head down on top, and then we go ahead and we torque the bolts. So here we go. Hey guys, just one more thing I wanted to point out. You know, a lot of times we get so hyper focused on making horsepower and acquisition of horsepower and torque, we tend to lose sight, or, you know, maybe let it take a back seat, and that is reliability and dependability. And, you know, a lot of that stems from the cooling system. Obviously right here, guys, this is where your thermostat goes, and right in here, a lot of times this will build up with corrosion and rust. And we went through there and we went ahead and cleaned that all up with a die grinder and a little carbide burr, and got all the rust out of there. And I don't know if you can pick this up in the camera, but there's a little hole right there. Well, that little hole, coolant goes through there, and you know, that's what it really allows this thing to cool. So if that is blocked or even semi-blocked, you're gonna have a cooling issue. And what I do is, on the other side, you can't really see, is I run a drill bit through there and I make that hole just slightly larger to increase the cooling potential that this cylinder head will have. So anyway, I just wanted to touch bases on that before we bolt this thing up, and then we won't be able to see it. So here we go. All right, guys, so here we go. We got the deck all cleaned up, and we got the gasket on there. We got the copper coat sprayed on there. So we're just getting ready to get the head out here, get up on the cherry picker, and we'll get this thing bolted down and get it fired up, man. Take this thing for a spin. I'm pretty excited to see, you know, how this thing's gonna run, see how that port work made a difference. And, you know, we didn't just port the cylinder heads, or the cylinder head rather, we also ported the exhaust manifold, and we ported the turbo, all to match. I don't know if I got a chance to show you guys, but the turbo, let me actually show you guys the turbo real quick. It's right over here. If you're familiar with like a regular 12 valve Cummins, they have what's called a twin scroll turbocharger. This one is not. You see how it's just open in the middle? So the customer went ahead and he put this truck together originally, and he is a welder. He's a welder instructor, and he took a 12 valve exhaust manifold and went ahead and capped off the ends here. And anyway, it's a twin scroll. So what happens is that divider in the middle, and originally it's squared off. We went ahead and tapered that to a fine point at the ends, and we port matched all this to match the gasket. Now, the reason why we did this is because if you had exhaust coming out of here going into the turbo, this dead space right here would create turbulence. It would create a low pressure spot. So by making this come to a point and tapering that off, now there's not going to be that low pressure spot, and hopefully that's going to make it spool just a little bit faster, you know, keeping that turbulence out of there, making everything flow and transition from you know, one spot of the engine to the next smoothly and efficiently, you know, out of the head, through the manifold, through the turbo, down the downpipe. So we'll see. A couple more hours, we'll have this thing going. So check this out, man. This is why you go through everything when you're doing. A lot of people think, oh, well, you're just doing a head gasket. Why don't you just unbolt the head and bolt on a new gasket? No, man. I mean, you can do that, you know, and yeah, sure, it'll get you down the road, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. I don't do repair jobs. We're going for performance. We're trying to build somebody their idea and my idea of the ultimate vehicle, right? We're trying to make something powerful that has reliability, longevity, and durability. And this is one of the things you got to kind of look out for. So check this out, man. This is just a boatload of rust, and that's just from this thing sitting. You can see that just peeling off of there. And this is exactly why you just don't fill your cooling system up with water. I mean, if you got a blown head gasket or something like that and you're just trying to get it down the road, sure, I mean, there ain't no point in buying coolant. But if you have a good running engine and, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, there's no reason to put water through it. You know, the inside of your engine block is not painted. It's, you know, at least these older ones aren't. They're not coated with anything. You know, it's the coolant that keeps these things from rusting from the inside out. So when you run them with a bunch of water, this is, you know, pretty indicative of what you would end up with, just a bunch of frickin' rust. And, you know, we're gonna go through and we're gonna clean all that out of there. Take the die grinder, go through, clean out all the rust, and wash it out in the parts washer, sandblast it, and I'll paint it on the inside and the out. So, you know, in the future, if somebody ends up with this truck and it's not the customer, you know, his great grandkids or whatever, and they don't know any better and they're putting water in there, hey, at least the thermostat housing ain't gonna rust out, right? So anyways, just a quick little tip, you know, that's something you always want to take care of while you got things apart. So there you go. Alrighty guys, so we got the head on. I know I didn't record it, but hey, sorry. It's on there though. It's turning out pretty good. I was kind of worrying about painting the head black on this tan engine, but I think with the head painted black and the timing cover black, and then also the harmonic balancer down there, I think it'll look good with the tan valve covers and the black exhaust manifold and polished out turbo and all that. But it's turned out pretty good, I think so. Dom's over there just spinning on the last filter. We put on that dual fuel filter setup, so it's turned out pretty nice. I'll record some more of this once we get this whole thing together and get it all fired up. My wife's headed over to CarQuest right now to go pick up the 180 degree thermostat, the fail-safe one. That's the one I like to run because, you know, for obvious reasons, right? If you're driving along and your thermostat fails, it's best if it fails to the open position. Sure, your engine isn't going to heat up and get up to, say, operating temperature as quick, but at least it's not going to seal it shut, and potentially you run the risk of overheating and blowing a head gasket ultimately. So it would really suck to do all this work and then get a faulty thermostat just to blow the head gasket after we torqued all this stuff down. And we're actually able to get 125 foot-pounds out of factory Cummins head bolt, which is really cool because I've always ran them to 120, and you know, obviously we get up there in stages, and I've had really good luck with that. But you know, I wanted to try to go a little bit higher, and I have some extra head bolts in the shop, so I figured, you know what, there's no better time than the present, right? So we went ahead and we did it, and yeah, they actually held really strong. None of them were spongy, none of them started stretching, and that's kind of what you would expect for a fastener that's not able to hold that kind of torque load, is that you know, it starts getting spongy, and basically the bolt starts to hourglass, and that's just that thing stretching. So we didn't experience that on a single bolt. They all held super strong all the way till the end, so that's awesome. And we you know, we put the graphite assembly lubricant on the threads and on the underside of the head of the bolt, so that way there's no resistance to torque as we tighten it down, just through the friction, you know, of the fastener meeting the head. So we got the injectors in, and they're all torqued down to 50 foot-pounds, and they got new copper crush gaskets. Now those copper crush gaskets, they if you ever order a kit, what you're gonna get is you're gonna get several different thicknesses, and I think a lot of people are maybe curious as to why, or you know, which ones do I use. And a lot of people, myself included, when I initially started doing this, I like to lean towards the stuff that's bigger, and you would think that the thicker ones would seal better, and they may do, I don't know, but the thickness of that copper crush washer matters because that determines the depth of the injector. So if you can get the injector deeper, you're essentially advancing the engine. So when you advance the timing on a diesel engine, you're advancing the gear or advancing the pump on the case, and you're making it to where the fuel sprays in sooner relative to the piston travel in the cylinder. Well, if you could physically move the injector deeper in its injector bore, you're effectively doing that exact same thing. So I set the timing where I set it on the gear, and I leave a lot of timing left outside externally for adjustment purposes, so we can always add timing to it or take it away. I set the pump pretty much in the middle, but I do like to stick the injectors deeper into that bore, even though it's probably 20 thousandths deeper. That does make a difference, and that's the reason why the different manufacturers, whether it's Cummins or if you use an aftermarket gasket kit, or even some of those kind of cheap ones you find on eBay, they all come with the different thickness of those copper crush gaskets, so, or washers, copper crush washers, and that's the reason why. So we went with the thinner ones, just to try and get that down in there and gain a little bit more timing out of it, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, right? We know that the engine's reliable, it runs well, but it's a pretty large truck. You know, you guys have seen it before. It is a crew cab, short bed, 4-wheel drive, 73-ish Dodge Power Wagon. It's a big freaking truck. So to ask a little 4-cylinder diesel to move this down the road at speed, you're asking a lot. So we're trying to get as much power as we can out of this. And again, we don't have a P-pump. Hey guys, you know, when we're here working late at the shop, we get pretty hungry. Luckily, I have an amazing wife. I mean, she's at home right now. Get this. She's making me homemade chicken soup. Potatoes, carrots, onions, celery, obviously chicken, rice. She's making that all in the slow cooker. She's giving my son a bath. She's putting him down for bed. She's cleaning the house. I gotta be the luckiest guy in the world, man. Dang, dude. I'm freaking hungry. Ooh. Them are some good looking pretzels, man. Peanut butter. Y'all want some of this? Hey guys. You got some stuff on your face. Y'all want some of this?
I do.
Ow!
Oh, that was vicious.
Golden! Ha 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 ha!